comment about new alerts produced, have you configured for that? And I'm going to put in a little plug for model validation and calibration. You are constantly always having to calibrate based on new risks, new alerts, new products, but don't forget the model validation. That's really critical to make sure that this is still operating effectively, right? So,
Right. And I know it takes time. You have to test it. You
yeah.
have to be satisfied with the decisions that you made to calibrate your model, your transaction monitoring system. I know it takes time. You have a change control process, but in the meantime, too, all these transactions are are continuing. Mobile banking transactions have increased. So again, the wise decision is do a little look back for 2 months to make sure you're not missing something that you should have detected. And again, too, I can't emphasize following up with your employees. If you have half your staff working from home or the majority are working from home, do that constant reach out and touch point with your employee, because they may be stressed working from home as well. If they're a parent, if they have children that are also home doing schooling from home, you've got parents juggling work and being a substitute teacher. So they may have anxiety levels too that they're facing that they're not used to. So, reach out to your employees to show that you care about them, but also to keep them in the loop, have that constant communication ongoing, whether it's through emails or a weekly meeting, have a set agenda so they know what to expect. But don't forget, about the human factor too. So,
When
yeah.
you and I had the pleasure of working together, we used to do these huddles. And, when you talk about working from remote, one of the areas of BSA is it's so collaborative, right? So you get an alert or a situation you're not exactly sure, you kind of lean over to your colleague that's sitting next to you saying, what do you think about this? We're missing all that right now, right? And
We
so
are.
I can't express how important Liz's point is keeping that touch point, that huddle with your BSA and your compliance staff to talk about the risk, talk about what they're seeing. Absolutely, that's still very critical. And maybe you Zoom with everybody, look at everybody and talk to them.
Right. At least you still have that. I know on a personal level, I do miss socialization. When I started working from home as a consultant beginning of the year of 2020, it took getting used to. I didn't realize how much I missed the interaction with my colleagues at work. Even if it was, to turn to my neighbor in the cubicle next door, or just that let me run something by you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have that. And you don't realize how much you miss it until you don't have it. One thing too, you and I discussed, Radhika, is the fact that we have to also consider privacy issues.
Yep.
We are responsible for those of us that work from home, you're still responsible to maintain that privacy of client information. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, I know that in some homes, everybody's working off the dining room table. Your spouse, your children, everybody's working in an open environment, and you need to remember, customer information is still private. Cannot share that, cannot divulge it. And if you have to go on a conference call that you're going to discuss personal information, excuse yourself. If it means going to the backyard or a closet, the bathroom, this way you don't put your family you don't put your family in jeopardy of having to expose them to private information, as well as, also violating the privacy responsibilities you have for your customers of the bank. Just that little side note.
As I said, when you and I talked, clean desk policy still applies regardless if you're in an office building or your desk and you have a partner that has a desk right next to you.
Mm-hmm. So don't forget, you still have to log off, lock your screen, or invest in one of those screen filters so, nobody else can see it except you. You still have to make sure that you protect everybody's privacy. So another challenge too during the pandemic months is training. Training cannot stop. In fact, the regulators still check, when they come to examine, what have you done about training your employees? Again, we have the challenges where not everybody is now at the location, they're physically working from home. Some are in the office, but what do you do with trying to set up training? Again, it's you have to be creative, and the new word now is Zoom calls. I mean, everybody I think is so used to Zooming. So you can also set up training with Zoom sessions. And I think the flexibility too with the Zoom sessions is that you don't have to ensure that you offer it, at a certain time of a day or a month to ensure everybody's there in person to provide that in-person training. You can be flexible enough where you can even record the session, and you can have employees log in and see the same session that somebody else saw yesterday. So there's that flexibility of utilizing Zoom calls. You can now work with everybody's schedule, work from home. When they log in, you can track that they have logged in, so you know that they're not cheating you. We should also rely on communications by email. Email works to send red flags or case studies to show the employees, look at what the DOJ is doing with the PPP loans. They arrested somebody who is local in our neighborhood, or the fact that they are looking at certain types of businesses. Here's somebody that used the PPP funds to purchase a Lamborghini and purchase art and jewelry. We have to monitor for this, just as a quick reminder. Another thing I wanted to mention is that the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, they put out this bad list of marketers that are falsely selling cures for the COVID-19, or they're selling healthcare products, making claims that it's 100%, fights bacteria or fights, germs, when it really doesn't. They didn't test it or prove it, but they're putting this information out on the internet and making sales and profiting. They're profiting from people making these false claims. Now, FTC has put out this bad list. They have sent letters out to those marketers to cease and desist false advertising and to stop making those claims. Look at that list, because if they're your customers, you might have a reputational risk then. If that marketer is your customer, and now you know that they're falsely making claims and benefiting that, they're collecting money on this. And the risk too is that what if the DOJ and law enforcement gets involved? If they arrest them, then there's that also chance that they may freeze the assets. So what if your marketer also has secured loans on file too? They may freeze the collateral of that asset, so you're at risk as well. So those are types of things you want to communicate, types of things you want to monitor also. And again, as a human factor, weekly calls to your employees, or even just a quick 5-minute reach out. Just say, how are you doing? Anything I can do to help you? Have that weekly scheduled call with an established agenda, so all the employees understand this is the information I'm responsible for sharing. This is what will be shared during our 30-minute meeting, as well as communications from management. Here, your BSA officer can share, this is the latest that the company is going to do in terms of reorganization, or these are the new office hours for branch locations. So keep your employees in the loop. It helps. And at the touch point too, even something as simple, hey, happy birthday. I remembered your birthday today. Here's a virtual birthday, greeting from everybody. Little things like that still keeps everybody, in the loop. And creative training, again, be creative. I think utilizing Zoom calls and being flexible is a great way of ensuring everybody is trained. It's not just BSA and OFAC. There's all sorts of other regulatory requirements to train employees on compliance. And then hopefully most institutions now are using a computer-based training system, a learning management system. So make sure that that's still on track, and you track that employees are properly completing the training sessions within that time frame as well. Don't let anything go through the cracks.
And we all know training is one of the pillars, right? But
oh yeah.
At the end of this presentation, we also have provided you, and it was mentioned earlier, links to several of the publications that we use to create some of the content today as well as other resources. However, when we're talking about training, some of the best training is the anecdotal training. You know, taking these case studies that we're hearing about in the news from the Department of Justice, from the FTC, and things like that, and using that as a training mechanism for your Zoom or your board. I mean, I really encourage you to take some of these examples and say, in our community or in this state, these are some of the new risks that have emerged in our state from a BSA perspective. This is what we're doing to combat that risk in our program. That's the kind of training I would deliver to your board now, because when board members come on as a board member to your institution, they have to take the basic, you know, training about BSA and the pillar requirements and all the elements for the program. But let's take it to another level. Let's share with them why this is important. Let's share with them all the good work that you're doing in order to combat some of the new COVID-related risk as well as the existing BSA risk. But let's share those case studies.
Oh, it's so true. I can remember an operations officer where, as much as I would say tax fraud is illegal and we need to report on it, and the operations officer just kind of pushed it aside until I started sharing tax fraud stories and how individuals as well as companies were being implicated on tax fraud. Then the operations officer said, oh, I get it now. You know, this is against the law and we need to report on it, because she just thought that's okay. It's okay to let it go. And I said, it's not okay. We need to know about it because we need to investigate it. And again, you have to remember, what are the risks to your institution? Reputational risks, seizure asset risks. Again, start considering that. One other thing too that I also mentioned, throughout the last few months, guidance has